Hey guys, we got a quick video for you here today because I want to continue the daily uploads, even on days where I don't have much time, like today, because number one, I am working on the preparation for my movie. Stay tuned with these daily uploads for more updates as soon as I am able to give them. And also because sometimes you need self-care, and today I am, however I do it, I'm going to bed at a reasonable time, and before I do that, I am watching an Italian crime movie. And it is probably going to be the amazingly titled Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man. I've heard it's a sleazy trasher piece of the highest order, with a great opening chase. Can't wait. Anyway, sleazy trasher pieces aside, this relative lack of time recently is why I have not yet made the thread on Spore/sleep in DPP after making the video about it, which I have been tasked with, and I will because I do think that should be addressed, but because I am constantly thinking about how we can improve DPP. The other tiers set them on fire, don't care, but DPP, you know, that's the one closest to my heart. Straight to Your Heart by Loop, in heavy rotation in my listening recently. Anyway, yeah, so with that in mind, I had a brief discussion about this a few weeks ago or whenever, about the other issue of paralysis. And this is not a new discussion. Obviously, paralysis is now a pretty universally despised status. I mean, even when it's nerfed to, you know, T-Wave being 90 accuracy in Gen 7, and, you know, it doesn't quarter speed, it only halves it, it's still a pain because of the free turn factor. We've been looking at a lot of stuff that, you know, provides free turns as being too much of late. So, I think this is a good thing, of course. We can only make the metagames more competitive this way, because we're not trying to completely overhaul them. We are trying to optimize them so we can enjoy the game minus the potential for stupid stuff. Obviously, stupid is rather subjective, but you understand what I mean with this little colloquialism. So, yeah, the idea of a para-clause is something that's been thrown around. I even made a video about it last year. But seeing as we are currently trying to move away from, you know, sleep clause and freeze clause and these things that break the mechanics of the game, I think it's wise to not try and incorporate another one of those, you know? I mean, it'll be tough enough trying to repeal sleep clause, or not sleep clause, sorry, freeze clause, even though fishing for multiple freezes is really debilitating. And, you know, is that something we're just going to have to live with? So, if we are going to have this sort of fealty to cartridge mechanics. So I had another idea, which is what was discussed not that long ago, which was, you know, forget Paraclaws, just ban Thunderwave. Because I realized that, you know, all this talk of bans, especially in old generations, especially when we're talking about, you know, removing RNG, I feel like I need to make a video on the whole subject of, you know, are we even playing Pokemon at that point? Because I really dislike this argument, simply because it feels very dishonest. Nobody thinks RNG is good for the game until it comes time to get rid of it, you know? It's kind of like, oh, this thing is so broken, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Well, let's ban it. No, actually, it's good for the game, you know? And in case you think that sounds like an exaggeration, I'll remind you that it wasn't that long ago that people were swearing by Machamp's necessity to check DD tar for offense in DPP. So, and nobody had ever had a positive thing to say about Machamp ever before that. For, you know, a decade plus, decade and a half more like, and suddenly, you know what? Everyone hates this thing. Let's do something about it. It's good against DD tar, you know? That's not nothing. So, obviously I'm not talking about something as extreme as, you know, breaking the mechanics of the game, you know, like removing crits. I wouldn't be opposed, but okay, I accept that that is, you know, going too far or whatever. But that's why, you know, we're not talking about breaking the mechanics of the game. We are talking about banning things, you know, instating clauses, agreements that could be replicated on the cart. You know, like our current implementations of sleep clause and freeze clause, those don't exist on the cart. you could make some sort of theoretical argument that, our version of freeze clause is, if you double freeze, then you agree to play the game until the exact same thing happens again, minus the second freeze. So it's because it would be unfair otherwise, but okay, sure, and sleep is a whole other can of worms. But, this would not be like that. This would just be getting rid of Thunderwave. Because, obviously, you would say, well, why not ban all paralysis? Now, banning Thunderbolt, that's going to be a little much, right? So, Thunderwave, to me, is the clearer target here. Because if you go for paralysis with discharge on Zapdos, for example, which is that and like the occasional Rotom, but really I haven't seen a Rotom use discharge in a long time. So I think we pretty much just chalk it up to Zapdos, right? And even Zapdos prefers running Thunderbolt a lot of the time, as much of a discharge truther as I am. So I should mention, by the way, that nobody should be claiming that this will remove all hacks from the game. That's another kind of, non-argument. People say, oh, well, why bother trying to improve the game if it won't make it perfect? Well, because making things better is good, actually. Anyway, let perfect not be the enemy of the good and all that jazz. So, I say this to stress that discharge coming from Zapdos is one thing. Because, again, 30%. And if we're okay with Scald, which we all seem to be, then I think that would be fine, right? And the other paralysis spreader is, of course, Body Slam Jirachi. Yes, it's a pain, but it's one Pokemon. And when you allow Thunder Wave to be thrown on everything, then you contribute to the, I think, negative influence where people use Thunderwave as a kind of substitute, as a because not as a substitute counter, as a counter to everything, basically, because the reach is just too wide. When you can throw it on, Celebi, Starmie, Blissey, Clef. If you want to paralyze something with Starmie, I think you should have to use Thunder and go for that 21%. Factoring in 30% para rate and accuracy. When you can just threaten everything with T-Wave, I think it's too much. And this, people hate para spam in DPP. Like, when DPP gets mocked, it is often because para spam has such a negative effect on competitiveness and player interaction and all this other stuff that we agree is good for the game. We want that, and para spam just gets in the way because you just para everything and then go to town. I agree. It's pretty stupid. So this is why I think it's a good idea to nip it in the bud, or at least try it. I really... And then, the pro-para arguments suddenly start coming out when you've never heard one before in your life. I've seen it already. It's like, well, para is good for keeping setup sweepers in check. It's like, setup sweepers run Lumberry a lot, not just for para, also for para in many cases, obviously, but the idea that, without Thunderwave around, suddenly every DD Gara and Calm Mind Jirachi and I don't know what, and SD Scizor, Trick Room Bronzong, there are plenty of setup sweepers which either shrug para off or deny, or aren't bothered by it. And yes, of course, obviously, a para is going to annoy something like an SD Lucario or an Agility Empoleon or whatever. Or even the fact that you get to deny two DDs. You get to deny two... what am I saying? You get to deny two opportunities to set up a DD against the Lum thing. Okay, sure. But, I feel like whenever these kinds of arguments get made, it always seems to be like, without paralysis, you suddenly become completely helpless against everything. Like you wouldn't have another move that could, slot it in. Or like you slot in that same role of denying setup. People actually complain offense isn't good enough in DPP, and I would chalk a significant portion of that up to the ubiquity of paralysis. It's difficult when you want to be fast and hit hard, and this move is coming around every corner. Obviously, you got to contend with Body Slam Jirachi and Discharge Zapdos, but those are two Pokemon, and like Discharge Zapdos, they give up on a lot. To say nothing of how Rotom can get paralyzed in DPP, so you can switch. So you can't switch that into T-Wave, but you can switch into Body Slam Jirachi, for instance, because Electrics can get paralyzed in this gen. Anyway, so a little scattered there. Yeah, so I don't think that setup sweepers suddenly become outrageously powerful. If anything, people are feeling a little too down on offense in general. I'm not saying I agree with that, but I'm saying that is a prevailing sentiment among many players. And I see the reason. I don't think it's baseless at all. I understand where they're coming from. I just feel that it's not quite that bad, but I get it for sure. So the idea that setup sweepers suddenly become unpalatable without para is a bit, I don't want to say hysterical, but overblown. Let's call it that. So yeah, and another thing is that para is also really nasty for defensive stuff. Like, it's, even if you're naturally slower than a setup sweeper, I mean, look at all the damage Gyarados can do. I mean, yeah, Gyara controversy again after that last video on it. But really, think about how when you are paralyzed, then you are not as able to take on whatever you're trying to take on defensively, because, someone put it like this recently. I forget where I read it, but it's really beautifully, succinctly put. And, paralysis turns every single move of yours into Will-O-Wisp. It's Will-O-Wisp I think they made it 85 in Gen 6. Yeah, so Gens 3 through 5, Will-O-Wisp is 75. It's not Focus Blast, but it's not that much better than Focus Blast either, And that's every move. That's, Recover. That's Protect. 75%, Like, you don't want to rely on that. That's terrible. I mean, Heatran Magma Storm, Gen 5 and later, is 75% accurate, but still not, you don't want every move to be Magma Storm, So, man, and with this in mind, I think that the limitation of how much paralysis you can dish out can only be a good thing. It's and again, setup sweepers. Yeah, I really don't think, especially because nobody is really over-relying on para for setup sweepers in general. They're a good tool for sure, but, the idea that the metagame collapses without T-Wave to keep Calm Mind Jirachi in check or whatever, I don't know, because, again, a lot of these run Lum. It's not even the speed boosters. Lum, I think, has been the best item on Super Rachi for years. It was pretty much the only one I've run in recent memory. Meaning the last several years. So, and that is because of para. Now, without T-Wave, then I would be able to run Leftovers Super, or maybe I wouldn't, because again, Body Slam Jirachi is still a thing. Discharge Zapdos, I want to be able to set up on that. Being able to eat a Rotom Will-O-Wisp is huge, or a Gengar Will-O-Wisp, or a Breloom Spore. Actually, that was huge. One of the biggest things about that, or Lum Jirachi in general, is that it switches into Breloom Spore, pretty decently. So, this is not just anti-T-Wave stuff. Lum is still going to be a hugely important item. Yeah, I mean, do you want your DD Tar getting burned by Heatran? No, you don't. So, even Gyara, which runs Lum much less than the other two DDers, T-Tar and Gyara. No, we're not counting Kingdra, because it should only be using specs. Yeah, I think a lot of problematic elements in the tier, like some people even have an issue with Latias, right? Defensive Latias, because it stonewalls so much on offense, and even the things that threaten it kind of get ruined by T-Wave and, Reflect. But if you take T-Wave away from it, I have a really difficult time. I mean, I don't think Latias is broken in this form now, but again, I understand it. I do sympathize with that perspective, because it is a limiting factor. I think it's good that, it can have such a wide reach against offense, and I'm really thinking about making a video dedicated to defensive Latias and DPP, actually. But yeah, you take T-Wave away from it. Obviously, it's still going to be a great defensive Pokemon, but it's not hardly going to be overbearing. I don't think. Yeah, I think it's worth trying. I don't know why we wouldn't give. I don't know why we wouldn't give it a shot. Because nobody likes this move, and it's really just a resistant. People like being contrarians and saying no, it's good actually, and all that we've established already. But again, think of it as an extension of how much people hate Machamp, or people hated Machamp. In Paraspam, and I don't think Paraspam necessarily is too overwhelming in the tier at this point without Machamp, but I do think that the crutch of Para as against everything is just ridiculous. I remember a tournament game from SPL 8, so 2017. And it was a good DPP player, and he T-waved a Heatran with his Jirachi. The Heatran switched in, and then he just subbed with the Jirachi because, that Heatran had only a 75% chance of moving. And in most situations, that's just 25 or 75% of the time, you have just lost health on your Jirachi from the sub. And that can be huge. Jirachi takes many hits by the skin of its teeth. It's very bulky, but certain bigger hits, Okos and 2Okos alike, avoiding those, you really need to be at high health. And obviously you can't avoid taking some damage here and there, but that was so avoidable, and it was just like, nah, what, the odds are pretty good. And that's the thing about Para. The odds really are good. So it's that whole blend of, it's used to counter everything, and it actually kind of does too good a job at countering everything, So I think taking that option away from Latias and obviously the biggest complaint in DPP is always and forever Jirachi. Imagine dealing with Jirachi when you are, I can't believe it's taking me this long to mention it. Imagine dealing with Jirachi when you can't when it can't with less paralysis strewn about. Because obviously if you're dealing with Body Slam Jirachi, something on your team might get parried. But it's basically just that thing you're answering Jirachi with. And it's a world of difference to where Jirachi's teammates are T-waving everything in sight, and then suddenly Jirachi becomes much better against them. You follow? When you have Celebi and Zapdos and Starmie and all these guys, obviously Zapdos has to discharge, but it's not as likely as T-wave. So, big difference. So when Celebi and Starmie, these Pokemon that wouldn't paralyze otherwise, and Clef, when they are able, or even Magneton and Magnezone, they run T-Wave on their Scarf sets. And Latias, obviously. When these Pokemon are strewing T-Wave about everywhere, then no wonder Jirachi suddenly threatens your entire team, because it is so difficult to avoid paralysis. You don't just have a status absorber, you can't. The whole point of these Paraspam teams, or I hesitate to even call them Paraspam teams, because so many of the best Pokemon in the tier. I mean, Gyarados learns T-Wave. They get access to the move, they use it, and you are going to respond to them with different Pokemon. You can't just have that one anti-para poke, and so you are going to have a very parried team, and then Jirachi becomes much more threatening, even if you're, bulky and at good health. And forget the Jirachi of it all. Just dealing with opposing threats in general when your entire team is parried is terrible. Yeah, and obviously, Gara and Jirachi, the major suspects, but I wouldn't want to deal with, a lot of the tier when, my entire team is contending with Para. So, it makes for some very, very uninteractive stuff, and that, I think, is really the core of competitive battling. Maybe I'll make a video about that, interaction in competitive Pokemon, why we strive for it. So, hang on, I just got an important text. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. That's basically it from me. Thank you for watching / listening. I think it's worth a try. And I don't think that we should be, afraid of sorry. This is, yeah. Okay. yeah, I don't think we should be afraid of this kind of thing, especially because, again, let's not pretend like we actually like this move. So, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.